Hi, this is Ruhi, and you have tuned into Dastane Musafirs. On this show, we explore poems and stories from my book, In Conversation with Light and Darkness. And this is also where you get to know the inner workings of my personal journey and the stories that built me. I want to start today's episode with the truth. There is an elephant in the room that we have felt, and I'd like to talk more about that. There is a stark difference between who I was back in 2019 and the person I have become now. And I see a lot like that around me, almost as if there is a universal desire at an energetic level to change over, to start over, to legit set milestones in our lives. We look around to see people quitting jobs, transitioning into something they want to do, making new choices, exploring uncharted territories, getting married, getting divorced, moving cities. What I mean is, we all are exploring horizons that we didn't even know existed. And now, thanks to that, lot of us have plunged into new waters and we are still learning how to swim. A place where old chapters have ended or are ending, and the new beginnings are yet to begin. A place of intense exploration without direction. Because even if we are doing what we used to do, we are doing things differently now. The world, like an old pair of jeans, has stopped fitting us. I actually wrote a poem about that, and I'd like to recite it. Here's how it goes. Suddenly, one fine morning, when the sky spelled a clear blue, I opened my closet. The world, like an old pair of jeans, stopped fitting me. It was too wound up to be wrapped around me. Just like that, I was there, but not really. I was present, but detached. I loved them, but not personally. For I'm a teddy bear sitting at the highway roadside watching the game of life. Everything around me is falling apart. The life I built, the lies I built, the identities I identified with, the life I called a fairy tale, like high walls of concrete in a circle around me, one after the other, kept falling. One by one, everything around me is falling apart. But life is about attending your own funeral, my therapist said. That's what I did. I wore a nice black gown, walked to my own funeral, dug a grave at midnight, and sat in there to surrender to my own death, to accept that a part of me is dying. I should let it go with love. The life I built, the lies I built, may all become the earth I come from. I stayed there all night, attending my own funeral with the people who existed only because I imagined them. Thus, when the next morning arrived, I walked the walk back home, drew myself a nice bath, and tried to pull out a new world from an old closet. But then it stopped fitting me. It's not the new beginnings that scare us to take the plunge, but the death of an old world we thought to be ours. When suddenly one fine morning, when the sky spelled a clear blue, I opened my closet and the world, like an old pair of jeans, stopped fitting me. So has the world stopped fitting you too? Well, it certainly has stopped fitting me and a lot of people I know. And that's why today on the show, we have a very special guest. She's been my mental health facilitator because she doesn't prefer the word therapist. She's been my guide, friend, and a very dear one. And most importantly, she's been an ever glowing source of love in my life. Welcome to the show, Prerna.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited to talk to you always. And this topic, mental health, self growth, is very close to my heart. So, super excited to be here.
Done this before, and like we were just talking, we used to go live on Instagram a lot earlier, and I remember a lot of people sent us questions. We did the same thing, but we did it differently, and now we are doing this on a podcast. So kind of what is happening around, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, like always, Prerna, I want to keep the same question. What is therapy? This has been our beginning question. So, what is therapy and why should I take it? However, this time when you answer it, if you could answer it this way, in the light of us, those of us who are living in this transition phase, how does that change our approach to therapy? And by now, I think you've already figured out this is based on something we were talking about yesterday, about how the meaning of therapy and mental health has changed as well.
As we were talking about, it's about self growth, it is about self exploration, it is about processing what you're going through. It could be change, it could be simply your relationship with yourself that is evolving. And any change is accompanied with mixed feelings, a little bit of joy and a little bit of sadness, and sometimes with a lot of pain too. Just like a butterfly, when it comes out of the cocoon, it isn't an easy process. And the butterfly has to do it themselves. However, a therapist in the human world can facilitate that process. And by facilitation, I mean that they can support you, encourage you, and help you find your solutions. They don't give you the solutions. When people resist going to therapy, they think all kind of therapy is clinical therapy, but that's not the case. Clinical therapy is for people who are suffering from clinical disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or dissociative identity disorder, and so on. They do need medication and a lot more support and guidance. But counseling therapy is for everyone, each one of us who needs an objective listening ear. And one doesn't have to settle for one therapist. They're free to go to one person first, and they don't like it, then they can go to another person till they find the right match. But important part is to not give up on the concept of self growth and self exploration.
I remember this happened with me as well. You were my third therapist. It took a while to, it's like choosing the right fit for yourself.
The right fit may take time, but sooner or later we are bound to find the right person for us, right therapist for us. We just need to stick to the process.
I know, always the process of self growth and healing. But Prerna, don't you think so? A lot of people have faced severe loss and almost, if you will, witness their fairy tales turn into nightmares. So many of us had to attend our own funerals. We've had to recognize triggers and conditionings inside of us that have shook us, that have forced us to grow. And how do you think we start from a place like that? You know, a place where we've already seen things which are very difficult to process. How does one start?
The starting is to sit with what are we really doing here when we say we are having a funeral. Sometimes people think they're having a funeral for one thing, but it is the funeral for another thing. We need to sit with that thing. What are we having a funeral for? How did we come to that place? Re traveling the entire journey, going over from the place where we started and to the place where we ended. If you see in Christianity the way the funerals are, in Hinduism the way the funerals are, or in any religion the way funerals are, people talk a lot about the entire journey of that person. And once you overlook the journey, then you can summarize it and not look at life in black and white, something that is to be discarded. You don't look